So my talk is about the Buddhism exhibition at the British Library, which is still open until the 23rd of February, so we are in the final weeks now. It is the first exhibition on Buddhism that is held at the British Library. So the aim really was to showcase the Buddhist scriptures held in the Asian collections at the library and to explore a bit about the life of the Buddha, the Buddhist philosophy, some aspects of Buddhist practice and how Buddhism is relevant in our lives today. It also explores the role of women, the certain scriptures that are particularly important in the three major traditions, Mahayana, Theravada and Vajrayana Buddhism. So we have some examples from all these areas. So like I said, the exhibition showcases treasures from the Asian collections at the library, and it has four main sections. So it's not a history of Buddhism or a chronological exhibition. So sometimes you will find objects that are 1,000 years old next to a contemporary work of art or scripture. So the four main sections are the life of the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni or Gautama Buddha. Then the second section is about his teachings, Buddhist philosophy, which also looks at some aspects of Buddhist cosmology, the ancient Indian pre-Buddhist concept of cosmology. Then a relatively small section looks at the spread of Buddhism and how manuscript culture and printing technology contributed to the spread of Buddhism across Asia. And last but not least, there is a section which looks at some aspects of Buddhist practice. So of course we have many countries where Buddhism is practiced, many different cultural backgrounds, loads of different languages. So Buddhist practice is very diverse, and Buddhism in Japan is completely different from that in Sri Lanka or Thailand. So we have chosen to look at just a few aspects, which we will see in a minute. So in the first section we have gathered together a number of manuscripts from the library's collections that illustrate events from the life of the historical Buddha. So it starts with a Chinese manuscript seen there on the left from the early 19th century. This manuscript has 4 volumes and it depicts over 200 scenes from the life of the historical Buddha. It begins with Queen Maya's conception when she became pregnant while dreaming of an elephant, and then his birth. So here you can see the moment of the Buddha's birth under the tree. It's a very famous image, of course. There are other manuscripts from Burma, from Sri Lanka, from Nepal. At the top here you see a 19th century manuscript from Burma. It is a folding book, so it is folded like an accordion. It's also called concertina book. So the really great thing with these folding books is you can open them up like 6-7 meters. It depends how long they are. So this particular one is nearly 8 meters long. So you can open it up completely and you get the impression of a mural painting from a temple has been brought down on paper, and you get the whole thing in front of you. So this is part of a multi-volume manuscript of the life of the Buddha from Burma, and the scene that we see here is the Buddha's journey to Tavatimsa, heaven, where he is teaching his former mother who passed away shortly after his birth, and then he's coming back into the human world on a triple stair that was created by the gods, by the Hindu gods. Here in the corner we see a manuscript from Nepal, again a version of the life of the Buddha. It was commissioned by a British colonial officer who is depicted there in the upper right corner. And the scribe is on the left, there in the left corner. So this is very unusual. So normally the scribe is not mentioned. The person or the patron or person who commissioned the manuscript is occasionally mentioned. But it is very rare to see them actually illustrated. So this is very special and one of our highlights, really. So then in the next step we are looking at what it means to be a Buddha. So we are explaining that the Buddha is not a name, it's a title for an enlightened person. So Buddha, the enlightened one. So here on the left we see a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha at the moment of his enlightenment, when he is touching the earth and calling the earth as witness for his enlightenment. So this is a loan from a museum here in London. So we have included some objects from museums to make it a bit more lively and to show the connection between the manuscripts and practice and as well. At the top we see a Thai manuscript with illustrations of the last 10 birth tales, the last 10 jatakas, which are very, very popular in Thailand still today. They are subject of theater plays, puppet theater plays, shadow plays, TV productions for children, all sorts of things. So there is an ongoing practice around these last 10 jatakas. But of course, altogether there are 547 such birth tales, and we have Burmese manuscripts which have illustrations of all these birth tales. So we see one example here at the bottom, where the Buddha is a golden deer or a golden stag. So this particular manuscript is also from the 19th century from Burma, has wonderful illustrations with nature scenes, so it's really amazing to see the original. Next, we are looking at the idea of Buddhas of the past, the Buddha of the future. So we have included some manuscripts depicting the Buddhas, 28 Buddhas of the past, or from the Mahayana tradition, there are scrolls with many more Buddhas of the past and names of the Buddhas. So here at the top we can see a manuscript from Sri Lanka with illustrations of 12 Buddhas of the past, giving predictions of Buddhahood to the historical Buddha. So this is a bit complicated to understand. But it's explained like that. So we can see here 12 Buddhas with the aureole, and then always on the right is the historical Buddha in a previous existence, receiving prediction of his future Buddhahood. Below there is a Thai manuscript from the 19th century, made in Thailand, and it has a very beautiful illustration of the future Buddha Maitreya, seen here on the right side. And then, of course, there is this idea of bodhisattvas, persons on the path to Buddhahood or have achieved enlightenment, but are postponing nirvana for the sake of or for the benefit of mankind. So one very popular is Bodhisattva Guanyin in East Asia. Originally this is Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, which became very popular in East Asia and very often depicted as a female bodhisattva. So here we can see Bodhisattva Guanyin painted in a beautiful miniature painting on a leaf from the Bodhi tree, the enlightenment tree. So again, this is one very amazing artwork. The second section in the exhibition sheds a bit more light on Buddhist philosophy, which of course is based on older pre-Buddhist philosophical concepts of India. So we decided to include some cosmologies that depict the different realms, the different forms of existence. So on the left, for example, you can see just a small part from a scroll, a paper scroll that was found in a library cave in Dun Huang. So this is 1,000 years old or slightly older, in very beautiful condition, very well preserved, because that library cave was sealed for 1,000 years. It was only rediscovered at the beginning of the 20th century by Sir Orell Stein, and so we have some manuscripts from that collection in the library, and that's one of them. Here we have an illustration of the six realms of existence. At the center there is again a Burmese manuscript, very colorful. Burmese are always very colorful. So that's the Himavanta forest, the heavenly, the forest where all the animals live together in harmony and with devas, and where also advanced meditation masters go to meditate, and bodhisattvas, and the Buddha went there as well. So that is the story around that. In early depictions of the Buddha were not in human form, so mostly very popular were the Buddhapada, the Buddha's footprint, and in the Burmese, or I should say in the Southeast Asian tradition, the Buddha's footprint, as you can see here on the right, has always 108 auspicious symbols. So these are also cosmological symbols related to Buddhist and previously Hindu cosmology, depicting various levels of the realms of existence. So next, in this section, we have included some examples of the Buddhist scriptures, of the three main surviving Buddhist canons, I should say. So in Theravada Buddhism, it's the Pali canon or Tipitaka, usually consisting of around 40 volumes if printed. We have a contemporary edition of the 40-volume publication, a recent publication in the exhibition, but also older examples. So at the top we have a Thai, it's a relatively small booklet with short extracts from the Sutta Pitaka for chanting. So chanting at funerals or other Buddhist ceremonies. So that's just as an example, because the Buddhist scriptures are just so extensive. You could fill whole libraries and museums with them. On the left there is one example from the Mahayana tradition. It's a Japanese scroll containing the Lotus Sutra, very popular, very famous, very often copied. So there are many, many copies of these Lotus Sutras. So this particular one consists of 28 scrolls. On display is only one of them. It's chapter 8 of the Buddha giving prediction of Buddhahood to 500 of his disciples. And this is extremely beautifully illuminated in gold on indigo paper. And it was commissioned by the Japanese emperor in 36, sorry. So this is just one example of these many Lotus Sutras that exist. We also have the Diamond Sutra, Heart Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, different lengths of them. So all the major scriptures are on display. From the Vajrayana tradition, one example here, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. So in Tibetan Buddhism, the Buddhist canon usually has 108 volumes. So again, this auspicious number 108. So we have the complete set of 108 volumes at the library, and they are quite massive. So Tibetan manuscripts are really big and very heavy, so sometimes you need two people to carry one. Not all are illustrated, so there are only a few that are beautifully illustrated and illuminated, and often they have a veil to cover the title page or to protect the title. Very beautiful textiles also. So, and that was actually quite a challenge for us, because in the library catalog we don't have notes about textiles that are attached to manuscripts, or sometimes manuscripts are wrapped in textiles. So we had no idea how many textiles we have in the library, and we had to hire, in preparation of this exhibition, we had to hire an additional textile conservator to get everything fixed and ready for the exhibition. So that was quite a challenge. So we have the official canonical scriptures, and in addition to these are already very numerous, but in addition to these, there are many scriptures which are locally important, so only in some areas, in some languages. For example, on the left side here, we see a beautifully gilded folding book. It looks like a block or a bar of gold, and it contains a commentary on the Abhidhamma, on the Pali Abhidhamma. This is in Shan script. Shan is spoken in Burma, parts of Thailand as well. So this is a commentary specifically made for this ethnic group speaking Shan language. At the top we see the very famous so-called Book of the Dead. It's not the correct title translation, but this is the title under which it became very popular and famous in Europe, and it's probably the most translated or most frequently translated, edited, reprinted, republished Buddhist book, I guess. So from the Tibetan tradition, not actually part of the Tibetan canon. Here below we see a Japanese scroll containing the Sutra of Filial Piety in Chinese characters. So this was important, especially in China or East Asia, where Confucianism was very strict and very important. And so the Buddhists were accused of undermining the principle of filial piety and of worshipping ancestors. And so just to make sure there's nothing wrong with Buddhism, this sutra was composed just for reassurance of the doubters. So the third section, which is slightly smaller than the others, it concentrates on the material culture of Buddhist scriptures. So here we are looking at different materials that Buddhist texts were written on. So the two earliest materials were tree bark. So in the exhibition we have a very tiny fragment of tree bark, which is 2,000 years old. And it took scholars from across the world ages to decipher the text in Kharoshthi script from the ancient kingdom of Gandhara. So very difficult, but they managed to decipher it and to identify the sutra, the text actually. So quite amazing. So also very frequently used, or most frequently used in South Asia, the palm leaf. So these long rectangular leaves, which could have text written on with ink or incised. So in Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, mostly incised. But in 20th century Thailand, they also started printing on palm leaves. So with modern printing technology, printed on palm leaves, and it's still done today. So it's a very popular material, and it continues to be so. Below we see, so I forgot to say, at the top, these are from the 12th century, so in relatively good condition with miniature paintings, quite outstanding. Below is a paper manuscript from Nepal, 1676, dated, and you can see it has those two holes, which don't fulfill any purpose here. They are just remnants from the older palm leaf format. So the palm leaves are held together with a cord, which is strung through those holes. But in the Nepalese or Tibetan tradition, there is no cord, no string. The holes are just there for no reason. So more durable materials were used, of course, as well. So, for example, gold plates with text hammered on. Then we have a silver manuscript from Sri Lanka with text incised in the silver. And the manuscript is not very big, so it looks like a palm leaf manuscript, but it's nearly a stone. The weight is nearly a stone, so quite amazing. On the left, you can see an ivory manuscript from Burma with text written on in lacquer. So again, that's a different durable material. In East Asia, we find very many scrolls, paper scrolls, some silk scrolls as well, or often paper scrolls with some silk backing. So, for example, on the left side, we see one scroll from the ancient kingdom of Khotan in nowadays northwest China. This also was found in the library cave in Dunhuang, so over 1,000 years old. Quite amazing the condition that it is still in. The ink is perfectly visible, so it's really amazing how they made this ink. So this scroll, because of the script and the language, it is opened from top to bottom, and it's read from top to bottom. But when you go to China or Japan, the scrolls are opened like this, horizontally, and read from the right to the left. So you can see an example from Japan at the top here. So this again is beautifully illustrated. It's a local Buddhist legend. It's nothing canonical. It's about a hero, a novice monk who's concentrating very much on his studies. But then some long-nosed goblins visit him, and so they transport him to the Buddhist hells, to show him around the Buddhist hells, and then to the Buddhist heavens, where he meets his father, who had passed away, and his father was a warrior, a samurai, and his father convinced him to leave his studies and become a warrior as well, to settle some quarrel or some fight with another clan. So it's a tragic, in the Buddhist sense, a tragic hero who left his studies to become a warrior. Yeah. Below is again, a folding book, paper folding book, this time from Thailand. So folding books are some sort of combination of the palm leaf format and the scroll. So the scroll was basically folded up so that the scroll was folded into a rectangular shape, so it looks like a palm leaf manuscript, but you open it like a palm leaf manuscript, but it's one big piece of paper, one long piece of paper, and very often beautifully illustrated. Mostly, so in the Thai or Southeast Asian tradition, mostly either with scenes from the life of the Buddha, or the birth tales, or scenes from the Himavanta forest, or from the Buddhist heavens. So of course, printing technology was very important for the spread of Buddhism across East Asia. So we have here at the top one example from Japan, really very early block printing, wood block printing from the 8th century. It's those small paper strips with printed texts, dharanis, Buddhist charms, which were scrolled up and then put into the small wooden pagoda that you can see there. And these were commissioned by a Japanese empress to be distributed to temples across Japan. So yeah, from the 8th century is some of the oldest prints in the world that survive. A slightly younger, quite a younger example is this folding book to the left, which is dharanis again, Buddhist charms, which were translated into so this printed book is in 4 languages. So this was commissioned by the Emperor of China, and again distributed across the kingdom. So it's in Chinese, Manchu, Mongolian, and Tibetan to distribute to those communities who speak those languages. Oh, here I forgot the temple libraries. So here in the left corner you see a manuscript box. So in the exhibition we have a small arrangement of manuscript furniture from Southeast Asia, some from Thailand, some from Laos, and they give you the impression what a temple library in the 18th, 19th century could have looked like. So there are several manuscript boxes which were custom made for one particular manuscript, and there's also a manuscript cabinet for a collection of Buddhist scriptures. So these are really beautifully decorated, illuminated with gold, and the really good thing is these are very unique. So each box is unique for one particular manuscript, which I imagine would have helped monks in the monasteries to identify a particular manuscript very easily. So if you remembered, oh, in this manuscript there is an ordination text, yeah, let's get that. So instead of library cards or computers that we have today, they used those special features to identify things quickly. So in this section of Buddhist practice, we faced again quite a big challenge. What do we choose? Are we going for rituals? Should we focus more on women because the focus groups, they had a particular interest in women in Buddhism. So we decided to look at how monastic and lay communities interact with each other and support each other. So the aspect of generosity and compassion, how is it expressed? So we included some manuscripts that were donations to monasteries, especially ordination texts, which were usually commissioned by the family of someone who ordained as a monk or novice. At the top you can see one example from Burma. It is made from pieces of cloth, probably discarded monks' robes, which were covered very thickly with lacquer, and then the text is inlaid with mother of pearl. So if you see the original, it's really mind-blowing. The mother of pearl is so shiny, and then those Burmese letters, it's just amazing how this was made. We also look at the role of monasteries, not only as abodes of monks and nuns, but also as places, as destinations for pilgrims. So their role for pilgrimage, and of course monasteries as cultural centers or centers for community life. So it's not only purely religious centers, but there's a lot going on. So we have one painting, one 17th century painting from Japan, where you can see a horse racing contest going on at a monastery. So, and then we also decided to include some aspects of Buddhist festivals or ceremonies. So, like for example, the scroll you see here at the bottom right corner, it is quite a long scroll, paper scroll, commissioned by some British officer in Sri Lanka. So, and it depicts the procession of the tooth relic. So this ceremony is still celebrated in Sri Lanka today in Kandy. It's a big tourist event and a cultural event. I think it lasts 2 weeks, so with processions and yeah, like a fun fair, more or less. But it tells the story how the Buddha's tooth relic was brought to Sri Lanka. So it was at a time of war, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Would the tooth relic get lost or destroyed? So it was hidden in the hair coil of a princess who traveled to Sri Lanka, and this is how it got there safely. So I like this story behind this painting. So, and then our focus groups advised us to include some objects that are related to mindfulness and meditation, because this is one aspect of Buddhism that has sort of become mainstream here in the West. So very popular meditation sessions. Many temples offer meditation sessions for non-Buddhists as well. So it's very open, and I think almost all school children in this country have to color mandalas to calm down when they are hyper. So things that are very that people are familiar with, even if they are not Buddhists. So we included one mandala drawing here. It's a drawing by a Nepalese artist from a tanka painting, so from a much bigger, colorful tanka painting that was made again on request of a colonial officer. On the left, we see again it's a tanka painting, but it doesn't have the silk frame, so it's just the painting on paper of the mythological bird Garuda. Again, this is a very beautiful painting in gold on indigo paper. A beautiful example of a tanka painting, which is also used as a meditation object. And at the top we have one of the treasures at the library. Our Tibetan curator is particularly proud of this one, a 14th or 15th century biography of Milarepa, the greatest yogi in the Tibetan tradition or in Vajrayana Buddhism. the great master and meditator Milarepa, together with a collection of his songs. And it has small illustrations as well, quite many of Milarepa, scenes from his life and how people come to interact with him. And so this is a nice story of Milarepa, who started out quite badly in life. So he did some bad deeds and bad actions, was responsible for someone's death, but then he chose to follow the right path and the right spiritual path, and sets an example that change is possible at any time, change for the better. Yes, so this is the storyline of the exhibition. We also tried to include some contemporary objects. So for example, we have 2 contemporary paintings which were just completed last year, shortly before the exhibition opened. One is a Tanka painting, A Wheel of Life, very popular, from Nepal. The other is this painting that you can see here. It was made by 3 artists in Singapore, but it is in 19th century Thai style. It's a banner painting or wall hanging, actually, and it depicts 13 scenes of the life of Vesantara, so the last birth tale of the Buddha. And in the Thai tradition, quite often the painter has the freedom to add a few elements that give the viewer an idea when the painting was made and who commissioned it and where will it be in the future. So the painters decided to, do I have a pointer here? But I don't, I will try and show it. So over here, just underneath the carriage, you can see a person with a smartphone taking a picture. So 21st century. And then here in the bottom right corner, there are two British policemen, and Shakespeare is just peeking out of the corner there. So as a reference, that this painting will be in the UK in the future, and specifically at the British Library, where many works by Shakespeare are held. So we got a few contemporary objects, also this baby Buddha. Some people wonder, why this baby Buddha made from plastic with this kitsch flower thing? It is a sacred figure. It is used in the annual ceremony, Vesak Day in May. So it's a loan from a Buddhist temple here in London, and they use it every year for the Vesak Day to shower the baby Buddha, which is symbolic for the purification of the mind as well. So we thought this is worth showing as well, because it is living practice. So yeah. So we also included some films. Some were specifically made for the exhibition in collaboration with Buddhist communities in London. Some Buddhist festivals. Again, here we see a scene from this Buddha's birthday or Vesak Day in May. We also included some contemporary photographs here from the UK and from Asia as well. You have heard some sounds. So there are these natural sounds from Asian countries, but also chants and Buddhist music that's from the library's sound archive. So we get a a really nice soundscape in the exhibition. So Laos was a communist country, so a lot was lost, but some monks, they were hiding things in old shoe boxes, underneath beds and underneath cupboards, so that quite a lot survived. And in this project, 35,000 photographs were digitized, and they are all now online, and hopefully it encourages research on Buddhism in Laos or Southeast Asia in general. So this is just one of the projects that we are doing. Yeah, and the exhibition was another project to reach out to the general public. So someone who is who's very advanced in the study of Buddhism may be disappointed because our labels are very simple. They are meant for the general public, and we have many school children coming into exhibition, school children who study religious education, they take their GCSEs. So it's really to give people who normally have no connection to Buddhism some insight and so maybe as a first step for further study. Yeah. So that is my presentation for today, and please, if you have questions, don't hesitate. I will try to answer them, but I must say my field of specialization is Thailand and Laos specifically. So I have learned a lot while curating this exhibition together with my colleagues at the library. Yeah, I will try to answer your questions. Thank you.
Could you please tell us, because it's utterly fascinating talk.
Thank you.
With many, many things. Could you tell us just a little bit more about the enclosure and some protection of some of the manuscripts, for example, by means of textiles? You talked about manuscripts in caves, dried in boxes, in very modern containers. But I was particularly interested in what you had to say about the textile-wrapped manuscripts. Could you please say a little more about that?
Yes. So you mentioned the caves. So that cave in Dun Huang, it is in a very dry environment. So in the cave, the cave was completely sealed for 1,000 years. So in the cave, it was cool, dry, and dark, ideal for the storage of manuscripts. So in the library, we store the manuscripts in the basement, cool, dry, and dark. So that's why they are in such a good condition. And so yes, I think in most Buddhist cultures or traditions, there is this tradition to wrap manuscripts with textiles. So we have found many manuscripts, palm leaf manuscripts in Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, which are wrapped in textiles and then put in those wooden boxes, or just the manuscript without a textile put in the boxes. But also in Nepal, Tibet, Mongolia, and very many in China and Japan have some sort of silk cover, some textile wrappings. But not all of them, one must say. Many palm leaves are just plain palm leaf manuscripts. So it was regarded as an act of merit to add a wrapper to protect the scripture, keep it in good condition and preserve it for future generations. So usually if someone or if a family or a community commissioned a manuscript, it would add some merit to also commission a box or a textile, a particularly beautiful textile. Yes. Yes, please.
Do you think that the same happened in Cambodia and Vietnam as the monks hiding things in? Would you find the same as you found in Laos?
Yes, so Cambodia is, I think, is a special case. So almost everything was destroyed. There has been a project to preserve what survived. So it was led by French researchers. So they tried to find what survived, preserve it, and digitize it. So that is all online as well. But Cambodia is really a special case where a lot has been lost, and I think there are now more Cambodian manuscripts in libraries in France than in Cambodia. Yeah. So Vietnam was not that extreme. I think in Vietnam monks were also able to hide things and protect them from this destruction. Yeah. Also, Vietnam has a very long printing culture, also modern printing. So I think there just existed more copies of Buddhist scriptures, and not in manuscript form, but in printed. Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
Very interesting, and thank you for summarizing the exhibition for us here. And I've seen this exhibition. I highly recommend this to all those who haven't seen it yet. My question is, what has been your experience, curating this important exhibition? And if I may add another question here, what has been the response of especially the younger generation crowd which had come to see this exhibition?
Yeah, so my number one experience is that I have learned a lot. So before that exhibition, really my focus was on Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, a little bit Burma, so let me say a general knowledge of Theravada Buddhism. I had no idea of the Mahayana scriptures and all those bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism, let alone Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism always was to me like something really that is very distant. So I have learned a lot. At least I have now an overview of the scriptures in the different traditions, the different art forms and manuscript types. So for me it was a massive learning experience, and I really cherish that. It's something that nobody can take away from me. The younger generations that are coming in the exhibition. So this is quite surprising to us, because mostly our visitors for exhibitions are older than 50. So that is usually the largest group. But this time under 30-year-olds are the biggest group. So that's the statistics. I don't know how they do these statistics. But we have a learning program for school children, so a primary learning program, a secondary learning program, where teachers can bring entire school classes into the library. So they get a short introduction, general introduction, some principles of Buddhism, so just the basics. And then they go through the exhibition, and so we get very, very good feedback from these groups, and also student groups. So we get requests from university students, either studying Buddhism, so quite many groups from across the UK, not just London, who come to the exhibition to get more specific tours, but also students who have nothing to do with Buddhism. So I had a group of students who study medieval history and things like that. So it's really good to have different groups of people, and especially younger people coming into the exhibition, because they are the future.
visited the exhibition quite a while back now.
Yeah.
The first thing that my first experience of it was actually the most peaceful exhibition space I'd ever entered. I mean, it was very much like moving into a monastic atmosphere, and it was very calm, and virtually everybody who walked in there was calm, was talking in a whisper, etc. I think I learnt most in respect of what you were talking about earlier, in respect of the packing away of the manuscripts, etc. Because I'd always wondered how these had survived. Because I've had a wee bit of an experience with these, so I know about all the insects and things. It's not
oh yes.
place for manuscripts. I was so entranced by certain aspects of it, I never quite saw the whole exhibition. So I have to go back. Thank you so much. It's lovely.
Yeah, I have the same feeling each time I go into the exhibition. It's just like entering a different world, working with the Buddha. And I have colleagues who told me during their lunch break, when they have a really stressful day during their lunch break or coffee break, they just go into the exhibition, sit down a bit, listen to the birds and to the chanting monks and nuns, and then they go back to their desk and they are calm and happy. So it is really a very good experience to be in the exhibition. And I get this feedback all the time. So we worked with an external a team of interior designers, so they specialize in exhibition design or museum design, but they had absolutely zero idea of Buddhism. So we had to teach them the basics of Buddhism, and at some point they got it, and then they came up with this design, and I think it's really done very well. Yeah, thank you for your feedback. Yes, please.
What is the earliest date of a documented archive manuscript? You have shown in a slide for 15th and 16th century. Are there any earlier than that?
Yes. So in my slides there were, I think, 2 objects from the 9th or 10th century. They are not dated, but we know they have been in that library cave from when it was sealed in the 10th century. So these are over 1,000 years old, and in the exhibition we have approximately 5 or 6 objects from that particular library cave. And then there is the other one from Japan, the oldest printed work from Japan from the 8th century, and then still a bit older, from the 5th or 6th century, we have gold plates in the shape of palm leaves, so these long rectangular shapes from what is nowadays Burma. So back then in the 5th century it was not Burma, it was small Pew city-states, so these were the predecessors of the Burmese. So gold, text on gold plates, and then still older, these small fragments that I mentioned, on tree bark fragments from the kingdom, the ancient kingdom of Gandhara. So these are 2,000 years old, and these are the oldest objects in the exhibition, so 2,000 years. 20 countries. we keep saying, visit 2,000 years, 20 countries. Yes, please.
Is most of the Buddhist iconography and image making always done in connection with storytelling or script?
No. I mean, paintings are also used for meditation, right. But also objects for worship, veneration. They are often commissioned or produced as acts of merit, right. Yeah, and sometimes they are actually not used at all. They are stored away in the temples, only brought out on certain occasions. Yeah, so there are different objectives and purposes. Yeah, it's not always scriptural.
When the exhibition, it was a wonderful exhibition. Thank you so much for your talk.
Thank you.
It adds a strange intimacy with it when you show it on the screen. But when the exhibition is over, will it be possible for schools to still go and see some of these things? And you still have something?
So yes, so in the library we also have a permanent display, which has a small Buddhism case. So there are 3 or 4 objects only. So this is open to anyone, the public. But anyone above the age of 18 can get a reader pass. It's free. And come to the library, to the reading room, and order those manuscripts into the reading room, even very old ones, and really look at them, read them, study them, translate them. Yes, so anyone over the age of 18 can do that. Yeah.
I didn't realise anyone could use,
Yes.
I thought you had to have various credentials.
No, it was like that 20 years ago.
Yes.
20 years ago, if you wanted to apply for a reader pass, or you needed a reference letter from some professor explaining why you need to see those manuscripts. But now the library has opened up, so the purpose is really to serve the general public and make things accessible to everyone. But of course it's an academic library, so children are not allowed in the reading room. So it's aged 18, or in some cases exceptions are made. So for example, if an A-level student is doing a project or something, they can get a reader pass from the age of 16. So that is possible as well. Yes.
But wouldn't that mean if they're really old and they need to be in dark and dry, you must have very, very well-controlled conditions?
Yes, so the storage is in the basement, dark and cold.
Coming up and down, doesn't it damage them?
Yeah, they don't come up and down that often. So it's mostly the same people you see in the reading room. So we know most of them. We know, okay, that person is from SOAS, another person is from Paris, coming regularly. So it's not, people actually don't look at them that often. Plus, many of the manuscripts, especially the ones which are requested frequently, they have been digitized, so people can look at them on their computers, so they don't have to travel. If they are based elsewhere, they don't have to travel to London, and so it makes things much easier, and it helps us to protect the manuscripts from too much handling and too much use. Yeah.
And how long does the exhibition run for?
Until 23rd of February. So it's, maybe less than 4 weeks. Yes, and there won't be another one in the next 30 years, I guess. So.
More questions before we finish. But it is a really wonderful. Yes. Is there any chance you extend the exhibition?
Pardon?
Is there any chance you might extend the exhibition?
Extend the. No, probably not extend. We are thinking of making it a traveling exhibition to go to other places. So, but that is, at the moment, there is just thinking about that. So I don't know if that leads to anything in practice. But it's a possibility, and I hope, that's we can do that. But then again, it won't be the entire exhibition traveling. So for example, the 2,000-year-old fragments, they are so fragile, they are almost like dust actually, so they won't travel. So certain objects are just not fit for traveling. Yeah.
Your permanent collection of where you said that there's the Buddhist scriptures, is that downstairs in the big open bit open to the public?
Yes, so it's called the Treasures Gallery, which is open to the public, so anyone can go in there and it's free. And
you have Treasure Island and you have Quran.
Yeah. So yes, there is
Bible,
everything. Yeah, there is everything. So there is Shakespeare and John Lennon, and so there's everything. European book bindings. Sometimes things change a bit. So we used to have quite a big case of Buddhism, so maybe 6-7 objects, but it has just been changed recently. So it now, in this case, is Buddhism and Jainism. So because before that there was nothing on Jainism at all, so we had to give up a little space for that.
Just another point. Sorry, I'm talking too much. You mentioned something towards the end of your talk that made a little light bulb go in my head. It's something I actually thought about while I was in the exhibition, and talked about objects of veneration, etc. Well, you see, I was going back. I was brought up in Russian Orthodox faith. They're all about icons, and I understand icons in a way a lot of people brought up in Western traditions don't. You look through them. You see, you don't look at them. You look through them because it's a kind of concentration to get in contact with the spiritual. I assume that's what happens. The people look through them, they don't look at them. If that makes sense in what I'm trying to say.
Of course, this is an individual experience, I would say. So there are many different types of meditation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
So it's a very individual experience. But in the exhibition, we have one Japanese print of 100 small Buddha figures. So there are just 100 Buddha figures. And if you look through that, when I was a child, there were those magic eye pictures. Do you know what that is? Stereograms? Yeah, where if you look at it, you don't see anything. It's just colors and But if you look through it, you see something. So there is some 3D shape or something. So in the exhibition, we have this print of 100 Buddha figures. And if you look through it, it becomes some kind of 3D, so Buddhas in 3D. And suddenly there is some, luckily I see it, and it becomes like illuminated. So there is some shiny light. I don't know how to explain it, but it looks fantastic. It looks fantastic. It's an illusion of the eye, or it's cheating the eyes somehow, but it's just an amazing experience.
That's a kind of physical manifestation of what I meant, because you look through something, it's really something happening here. You see?
Yes.
That's what I actually meant.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it's in the mind. It's in the mind.
It's
yes.
not out there.
No. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. It gives you this reflection on reality. What is reality? There was another question.
I'm curious about your 2,000-year-old manuscript. Where was it found, and how was it preserved all this time?
Oh, so this was excavated during an excavation, I think, in Pakistan. And it was found in a clay vessel. It was thought to be a water vessel, So, and archaeologists, they get very excited when they find a clay vessel in the ground, especially one that is completely preserved, not broken into pieces. So they got very excited, and they found actually several of those clay vessels. And it turned out, when they cleaned them, it turned out they had offering inscriptions in Kharoshthi. And then they looked inside, and there seemed to be leaves scrolled like cigars. So nobody had an idea what that was. And then they looked at them, I mean, very fragile. They couldn't really touch them or unscroll them. They would have been fallen to dust. So very carefully, conservation experts, they unscrolled them, and so they saw the text written on them. And then, so they flattened them or put them between glass plates, and researchers then identified those texts. Yeah, so they were inside clay vessels. Yeah. Again, so dark. It was closed up, dark, dry, and maybe cold. Or yeah.
It caused a huge stir at the time when they were discovered. It wasn't so long ago either.
Yes, the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot has been published about them. So there are at least
You'll find a lot online.
10, 12 books, published books. They have
books
translated some of them, and it was in the press as well. Yeah, you find a lot online.